Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Brenda Meller with Meller Marketing. We're here for a Saturday edition of Social Media Pie, and this is actually a series I created called LinkedIn Live-a-thon. And this has been designed specifically for individuals who are in career transition looking for a new job. And on this edition, this Saturday, we're actually going to be focusing on people that are working but looking for a new job. So the instructions are going to be just a little bit different. If you're working but looking, you may not want people to know that you're watching the video, which means you may not want to like or comment, okay? So be careful about doing that, and I'll remind you throughout the day. I want to invite our very first speaker for today, Stella Da Silva. Hey, Stella, how are you doing today?
Hi, Brenda. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. It is such a delight being able to see you in person and on video, I should say. I feel like I know your personality from watching you online, but it's such a delight to have you. And Stella, you're one of the folks I call my LinkedIn rock stars. Those people I've been really just admiring your activity, and you do such a great job of paying it forward on the network.
Thank you so much. I love being on that list, and every month it comes out, we're always looking. So it's great to be one of the LinkedIn rock stars, which is what part of my hashtag, actually.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that is so great to see. So I want to kick this off right away. And Stella is our first speaker, guys, and we've got a pretty good sequencing of things going throughout the day. So I want to encourage you, if you have questions, you can definitely add a comment. If you are unemployed, job seeking, in career transition, if you want to add comments as well, I'll pull your comments up on screen. And I see a few folks are watching us already this morning. So I'll start to kind of load those up. But what I want to do right now, Stella, is before we get into your talk about how to create a resume that pops, could you take a few minutes, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, so my name is Stella Da Silva. Currently, I'm in beautiful country of Oman. I actually work for the Ministry of Labour, and my area of expertise really is education and vocational training. So everything like apprenticeships, internships. I also deliver train-the-trainer courses. So that's what I'm doing currently here in Oman.
That's wonderful. And I don't remember how I first came about you. If someone nominated, I mean, sometimes I stumble upon people, sometimes people nominate it. I'm like, I don't remember, but I feel like I've just been following you forever. And it's just such a delight. And the list I put together is kind of international. And I love, actually, today we have people from around the world that are joining our speaker lineup. So
I know, right?
What time of day is it where you are?
So here in Oman, it's coming up, or it's just gone 6 o'clock in the evening. So yes, getting ready for the start of our new week, which is tomorrow. So our weekends is Friday and Saturday, and then our new week starts on a Sunday.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're in the middle of your weekend, and we're just kind of getting ours started here on Saturday.
Yes.
Well, I'm so glad you're joining us. So let's get started here. And I want to encourage folks, if you're interested, there's Stella's URL on LinkedIn if you want to pop and check out her profile. And we're going to get right into the topic here and talk about how to create a resume that pops. And I first want to ask the question, Stella, why is it important to have a resume that pops? And what does that mean?
I think a lot of people just think that a resume, or CV as we call it down these parts, has to be all fancy and tech and colors and this, that, and the other. And actually, a CV tells so many things in just plain language. So what you actually need to do is to actually put the words to demonstrate your competencies in a way that makes it pop.
Right. Absolutely. And it's so important nowadays too to be competitive, because there's so many people looking for work too, right?
Absolutely. What we don't want, Brenda, is when employers see a bunch of CVs, okay, because usually recruiters, employers, they normally have a ton of CVs coming to them, right? What you don't want employers to do with your CV is this. Okay? So that's what we're going to try and avoid. Because that's what
I was looking at her papers rustling. I'm like, she's either building something or grabbing on her notes over there. But I'm like, here we go.
And that's what I actually do, because that's what actually happens. Because think about it like this. Employers get probably hundreds of CVs and are just looking for one person. So they've got to find every excuse in the book to do that, to eliminate how many CVs they can shortlist. So anything from spelling errors, the font size, the language, the tone can give a reason why the employer can rip it up and put it in the bin.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. So we were kind of chatting before the show, and I have, I have kind of some questions, and you helped me to build this list of questions too. So I want to kind of go through some of these, and I'll encourage people that are watching, if you guys have any questions for Stella, you can put them in comments. Feel free to do so. But if you're working but looking, remember I said that people can see your comments. So if you don't want to do that, what you can do is message me on LinkedIn, and I will privately read your message to Stella. So I want to start with length of your resume or CV. And I've heard no more than 1 page, no more than 2 pages. I mean, what do you think? Is there an ideal length, how long your CV, your resume should be?
Right. Remember what I just did in terms of people ripping up your CVs. That's another reason potentially what potential recruiters and employers could do. If your CV is too short, it's sending a message. If your CV is too long or your resume is too long, it's sending a message. So what we say is on average, your CV shouldn't be more than 2 pages long. Okay. 3 at the very, very max. But 2, you can write plenty of good, brilliant stuff on 2 pages, done properly, of course.
And that probably depends a little bit too, Stella, based on how long you've been working, because if you're just entering the job market, you wouldn't have 3 pages. But also, if you've been working for 20 years and you're starting to look for a new job, you probably would have a difficult time fitting it all onto 1 page unless it's like 4-point font, right?
And that's why you need to be clever, because even though you've been working maybe for 20, 25 years, 30 years, some of us, we don't have to put everything on the 2 pages. Employers are only interested in certain aspects of who you are and what value you can bring to them. So we don't have to consistently write absolutely and give them a life story of our work experience. So again, on average, 2 pages is more than enough. And again, certain jobs would require some additional evidence where it has to be 3 pages, but nothing more than 3.
Okay, good. So that's a good guideline to follow. 1 to 3, and the longer the career, the longer the resume should be in relationship to that. So next question, what are employers looking for on your resume, on your CV?
Right. I love this question. So employers are usually looking for your skills. They're looking for your knowledge. They're looking for your experience, right? But what they're looking for is for you to demonstrate these things, because the mistake a lot of people do when they're writing their resumes or their CVs is to always just put lists of stuff. We don't care about the list. What I care about is what value you can bring to me into my organization. So you've got to demonstrate whatever it is you are listing, right? So that is what employers are actually looking for on your CV or resume. I need to keep remembering resume.
Yeah, right. Well, it's resume, CV, depending on where you are in the world, right?
Exactly.
And it really, I kind of like to always think about, people have this habit of just trying to cram everything in on the resume because they don't know what one thing is going to pop out. But really, I think you're probably creating more clutter, and it's better to have more clarity than it is to try to jam everything in there, right?
And that's why it's also really important in the way you actually format your resume. And that's the key, because again, without wanting the employer or recruiter to rip up that CV, you want to tell them something really interesting right at the beginning, so they don't have to go into the 2nd or 3rd pages to actually find out about who you are. So you want to start making them interested, excited, literally from the moment they see your name. So there has to be a format of how you actually present yourself on your CV.
Okay, good. And related to that format, I think of font. So is there an ideal font? I mean, can I use Comic Sans? Do I need to use Times Roman? I mean, what do you think on that?
Right. We need something that is attractive to the eye. And this is going to sound so maybe controversial, but the font should actually be the most boring font ever. Because again, Yes, because what we want is we want something that the reader can see. So we don't want anything fancy in terms of fonts like the Comic Sans and all those, sort of like pretty format. What we want is Times Roman.
Okay.
Tahoma is always good. Arial is always good. So
Okay.
again, these are kind of like the boring fonts, so to speak, but those are the ones that are really effective on your CV and resume. And also you need to think about these fonts, especially when you are applying online, because again, and we'll talk about this later on, ATS might not recognize all these fancy fonts anyway. So it's best to keep it clean. It's best to keep it boring.
That's good. So did I get the right ones? I tried to type it in, but my short-term memory, I'll admit, with the COVID fog is a little bit not good these days. So Times Roman, Tahoma, was Arial the third one, or what was the third one?
Yeah, Arial is a good one. Times New Roman is a good one. Verdana is a good one.
Verdana.
So all these ones that, again, just have plain text. Those are the ones. Font size should be anything about 12.5. Anything smaller, then we struggle to actually read it. And especially if you're going to cramp in so much information. So font size about 12.5.
Okay, good. I'm going to drop this in right now, and then I'm going to pull it back up on screen for those folks that are watching. I think with StreamYard now, too, it does actually push the captions out, which is great, but I don't think it's included in the playback. So I always like to grab these little nuggets and put them on screen in case somebody is trying to write things down, and they're like, what did you say? And even like for me, did you hear? I'm like, I know Times Roman. I'm not a big fan of Times Roman because I feel like it's such a defaulty font. And I'm a marketer, so I'm like, I always like something a little bit different, makes it a little bit more polished. So changing it, and I mean, I like Arial. Calibri is another one that I've used a lot. Tahoma, Verdana. I mean, these are all, like you said, common fonts that we're not going to worry if we put them on. Like one that I use for my brand font is Montserrat, but it doesn't load across machines. So sometimes it gets converted. So I need to PDF it to make it convertible.
And this is why it's so important. Remember, there is somebody potentially, if it's not ATS, there's a human being reading this fonts and reading these resumes and CVs. So they want something that is not going to distract or where they're going to struggle to read what it is you're trying to say. That's another reason why recruiters and employers can rip up your CV.
And that's such a powerful, I mean, when you were doing that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can hear it happening. Like, I don't want that happening. So I want to ask, there's a couple, I mean, some of these questions, I'm like, I would never do this, but I'm curious, date of birth on a resume and then photo on a resume. And I've done the photo thing, back in the days when I was looking, but what are your thoughts on putting your birth date or your photo on your resume, on your CV?
Date of birth is absolutely not required on your CV or resume, simply because as well, if you're applying online, you open yourself up to cybercrime. So again, this is personal data. So you don't need to put your date of birth. Another reason why we discourage people from putting their date of birth is that you may actually be discriminated against. So an employer might actually look at your CV, look at your date of birth and decide, oh, she's too old, she's too young, and oh, no, don't want another reason to rip up your CV. So again, that's why we always say don't put your date of birth for security reasons and the fact that you may be discriminated against. Same thing applies for pictures. Unless a recruiter and employer specifically asked for a photo, a picture, do not put one on your CV. Simply, again, because you can be discriminated on site. Some people might look at a CV and guilty, where I just think, oh no, not attractive enough, doesn't have the image of what we're looking for, and yet that person might be the right person for the job. So again, we say don't put photos on your CV. And one last thing with regards to photos actually take up a lot of space on your CV. Okay, we need that space to actually demonstrate the skills, the experiences that we talked about earlier on.
I've actually heard too, sometimes employers, if they see information that could be considered discriminatory, age, gender, race, photos, things like that, they won't even look at the resume because it's like they don't want Even if they aren't feeling that way, there could be unconscious bias that occurs. And then if they eliminate it from the possibility, then there's not even a concern. I don't know if you've heard anything along that line or not.
In the UK, they're actually protected with the Equality Act. Okay. So, you know, the Equality Act protects from discrimination and what have you. But the fact is, employers will always find a way to discriminate regardless. And we're saying putting pictures, putting date of birth on CVs is a way a potential employer or recruiter could discriminate. So don't do it.
Okay.
Don't feed them. Don't feed
even
it
worry.
to them.
Yeah, just avoid it entirely. They don't
avoid it completely.
Right. All right. So another question, and this kind of gets to the length of the resume. Do I put all of my experience in, like from the very first job I had since college all the way up till my current or my last job, or do I take things out? What are your thoughts there?
I get this all the time. So what employers are probably looking for are probably the last 10 years of your work experience. So even if you've got 20, 30 years experience, it really depends on the job you're applying for, number one. But usually they're really interested on what value you've brought in the last 10 years. And if you've been in one job, for example, for the last 10 years, then you've got so much to write about, because you've got to evidence to me what you've been doing in one organization for the last 10 years. So it means that you're going to write more than maybe 1 or 2 points, right? That makes sense to me, logically. Okay. Now, if you've been moving from job to job to job, you've been in one job for 2 years, one job for 3 years, that's absolutely fine. But don't go back more than 10 years, unless on the job advert, it specifically said 15 years experience required, 20 years plus experience required. Then, of course, you've got to evidence the amount of experience on your work experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And you know, I've seen people too, they would put all of their past experiences, but like their first few jobs after college might have just been their employer only with the job title and the years, and then skipping on. And it really probably depends on if you're changing industries to how relevant it is. If you've worked in, like for me, I worked in marketing and advertising my entire career, so that might be relevant, right? But if you've changed from engineering to graphic design, maybe that's not as relevant.
I'd rather you don't put anything. If you're just going to put where you've worked, job title, and how long you've been there, you're not telling a potential employer or recruiter anything. So why bother putting that information down? If you've worked somewhere, you've got to tell me exactly what you were doing in that job. So even if you've done work experience and internship, training for a week, my thought process is, in that week, you've done something. Well, tell me what it is you've done.
Yeah, good point.
So again, you really have to tell us what it is. You've got to demonstrate your skills.
Okay, good point. Good point. And related to that, I mean, we have a lot of people right now that are watching Stella, and they may have been displaced over the past year because of the pandemic. They're not working and they've got a gap in their resume, or maybe over the years they had to stop work to take care of a family member, step out of the workforce to raise their children. There's other things. So what about gaps on resumes? Should they try to hide those, or what are your thoughts there?
Don't lie. You will get caught out. So for me personally, I always advise clients, just tell them exactly what your employment gap is, especially if you've had one or two employment gaps. But be very clever in the way you say it. So what I don't want to see on your CV is something like, I was just employed for a year. Okay? Tell me what you were doing in that year, especially in the pandemic. Everybody knows there's been a pandemic, but what were you doing? How productive were you in that time? So were you doing some volunteer work? Were you engaging in podcasts? Were you writing a book? Whatever it is, tell us what it is you were doing. Also, if you don't put any gaps at all, as a recruiter or an employer, if I see any gaps within dates, my first thought is, were they in prison or were they sick?
Really?
And again, yes, that could be That could be red flags, okay? So if I see employment gaps, especially if it's months or a year, okay, and you've not explained what you were doing in that year, I can assume that you were either in jail, right?
Wow.
Or you were long-term sick. Again, two things that potential employers might not want in their organization, but don't make me make that assumption, because that's what some employers do, make that assumption that if you don't explain unemployment gaps, that could be it. That could be one of the reasons.
That's interesting. I never would have thought about that. And I think a lot of people that are watching are thinking, well, I don't want people to judge me because I stepped out to take care. I had a child. I stepped out of the workforce to take care of my child, and I raised my children for 5 years. Or one of my parents got sick, and I had to stop working or go down to a part-time job to do that. And I'm not embarrassed because of that, because it's choices I made, and I'm happy for them. But I don't want people to judge me, so I won't put anything on there. But you're saying it might be a red flag by not putting something. So just to put a quick one-liner. I mean, we're all human beings, so we have family members and things that we need to take care of. That actually will help you, as we're saying.
But think of all the skills you can actually demonstrate by taking care of people, or being a stay-at-home mum. Okay, you can demonstrate organizational skills. You can demonstrate financial skills. You can demonstrate time management. So don't be scared to say, yes, I took a year out to have a baby and look after my family. But what we want to see is how. Demonstrate the key skills. A lot of parents working, or a lot of parents at home will tell you that's probably one of the toughest jobs. And there's and there's usually no job description for that.
I've heard.
But look at the skills that comes with parenting.
Yeah,
you can easily demonstrate that on your CV. Easily.
That's a great point. And I've heard some people, Stella, they'll put, while they have that gap in paid employment, they'll put job title was CEO of Meller Marketing or Meller Household, like something where it kind of says, I was the chief executive officer. I was responsible for finances, for entertainment, for human resources, training and development, like all of those things. So it's a really good point to think about how to kind of address that gap, not cover it.
And I love that. Put a title to it. CEO of da 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 da. Again, that will automatically make you stand out from the stack of CVs that I have to rip off, because you've just said something that engages me, that makes me smile, that makes me think, you know what, she is so right. So again, be very clever on how you communicate these skills onto your 2 pages. You can do it.
Yeah, I love it. It's a good point. So let's move on. We got a couple more questions, and then I think we may have our next guest joining us in just a minute here too. And I want to invite our viewers. Actually, let me just see if your questions, and then let me see if there's any questions that have come to me in here as well. What about physical address? This is a question from Kenneth Lang. Should you put your physical home address on the resume or not?
Again, do not put your physical home address. You can put your town, you can put your country, but do not put your physical address, because again, you open yourself up to cybercrime, especially if you're applying online. So just put your town, your country, you're fine.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Awesome. And then let's see any other questions that are coming in, and I'm kind of doing a little bit of co-piloting here in the background. I'm like checking my email, making sure I'm waiting for Joe to come in the room. Hey, if you guys know Joe Saunders, tag her on LinkedIn and tell her she's up next, because she's not in the waiting room yet. I know I've got a couple friends out there that are friends with Joe, and they'll be like, Joe, you're on now. And she's not here yet. If she's not, we'll just keep going, Stella. And then when we're done, I'll just kind of vamp for a little bit myself, but
sure,
I'm fine with it. All right, so let's see what else in here. Some additional questions from our audience. College dates. What about that? College dates on your resume?
Of course, put your college dates on it, okay? But don't spend too much time, especially if you have been working for the last 20 years. What we're probably really interested with in terms of your academic qualification is probably your degree or your diploma. But if you don't go back to kindergarten, primary school, and second, not interested in any of that. Right. So yes, you can put your college dates, but again, don't go far back to when you were 11. We don't care.
Okay. Now, I've heard in terms of college dates, like if you're a new graduate, putting it on there it could work to your advantage because it does show you completed the degree recently. You're entering the job market, but maybe you're 20 to 25 years out. I've seen some people starting to not put it on their resume, Stella, because of the age discrimination and because you kind of gate people, right, by that.
Remember, we said don't put your date of birth, but if you're putting your dates into your college, then again we can deduce roughly how old you are. So again, that can work against you. But it really depends. Really look at the job adverts. Really look at the job description. A lot of the times, the employers actually do tell you exactly what they want, but somehow we refuse to use those as a point of reference to then retweak our CVs.
Okay. All right. Very good. And I'm scrolling through the list of questions. This is the challenging part, Stella. I'm trying to listen to you.
I know.
And then
multitasking.
It is. It's like multitasking, but it's interesting because there's like conversations that are happening in the chat here. And there's a gentleman who's watching. His name is Dan Roth, but he uses the hashtag not Dan Roth because there's actually a gentleman that works for LinkedIn. I think he's the editor-in-chief. His name is Daniel Roth. And they're like, hey, not that Dan Roth. They're like using his hashtag and talking about it in the chat. What about PDF for your resume, Stella? Should people convert their resume to a PDF before sending it, or should I keep it in a Word doc format? What do you think?
Again, it really depends. And sometimes some employers, recruiters will actually specify how they want you to send the CV. So again, just go as per requirements. PDF, obviously for security reasons, means nobody can edit it. And of course, Word means that people can go in and mess around and edit your CV. So to be on the safe side, probably PDF. But again, listen to what the employers want, because some employers or recruiters will insist that they want a Word document.
Word document, because they're not able to process, or there might be some other reason for their formatting.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. Yeah. Good to know. All right. Awesome. Well, we're going to start to kind of wrap up the conversation here, Stella. I'm not seeing Joe on yet, but if anybody knows where Joe Saunders is, tell her we're looking for her. She's up. But I will start a wrap, and then I want to allow you a few minutes to kind of any final comments that you want to share with folks, anything along that line. And then I'm also going to pull up your LinkedIn URL up on screen for folks that may want to connect with you. So let's kind of start there. Final comments, thoughts, and then are you open to accepting invitations from people?
Final one, and really it's not really a comment, it's really not really a thought, is to do it again with you applying for jobs online. Remember ATS, which is the applicant tracking system. And basically this means when you're applying online, it's a machine that recognizes how you apply online. So there are things that you should actually avoid when you're applying online. So things like graphics, icons, symbols, text boxes, colors, mixed fonts. We don't like any of that. The ATS just doesn't like it, okay? Horizontal lines, multicolors, vertical lines. So stick to the keyboard characters. Don't start getting too clever with images, pictures, because ATS won't recognize it. ATS also picks up keywords from certain job descriptions that the employer has put out. So again, it's so important that you really study the job description, because they're keywords that the employer actually wants you to demonstrate on your CV. And if you don't, guess what? Your CV is being ripped off.
Yeah. Good point. And we want to be careful about that too. And we were here talking today about building a resume that pops, Stella, and I have your LinkedIn URL and your profile right up on screen this way over here. Are you open to accepting new connections from folks on LinkedIn, or what's your preference there?
I love engaging with people on LinkedIn. You can find me there. Okay, so yes, please connect, follow. You can DM me. I am on LinkedIn most days, but do remember that I have got a full-time job. So usually it's when I come back from work that I just tend to go on LinkedIn, but I do put out content most days, and I love to engage with people. So yes, connect, follow me on LinkedIn.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Stella. Now I'm going to give you the option, Stella. I know it's 6 o'clock and it's 6:30 at night coming up right now for you over there. It doesn't look like Joe has joined the room yet, so we can go for another 10 to 15 minutes if you'd like, but I also want to give you the option to not, and I can certainly keep on with audience engagement. So really up to you.
I'm here.
You're good? Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. Let's go for it. If
So let's
your audience
keep going,
have
guys.
any other questions.
Yeah, so any other questions that are coming in, and I'm going to start to read through your comments here in the chat, and I want to start to bring up, I'm not sure what this means. TNR, do you know what that means, TNR? Oh, Times New Roman, haha, Times New Roman.
Ah.
They find it more difficult to read, and I think they were commenting on the use of serifs, like a font with serifs on it, a little bit more difficult on there. Yeah.
And again, this is why we always say trial and error on your CVs. Again, use different fonts, see what you like, but don't go overboard with all the fancy fonts is what we're saying.
Okay, good point. Good point. Let's see here. Scrolling through, we talked about the college dates already, and I'm going to look at your list. And you had a couple other questions that we talked about asking. What about interests and hobbies? Should we put those on our resume?
Oh my gosh, when people don't put interest on hobbies, I'm just like horrified. That is probably one of the best parts to really demonstrate who you are and show you a bit of your personality, okay? And the mistake so many people do when they put interest in hobbies is just give us a list. So we see the same generic, traveling, reading, cooking, swimming, all that. All well and good, but hey, guess what?
Yeah.
Hundreds of people have written that down. It is boring, okay? So a good tip here. If you're going to tell me about your interest and hobbies, then it's a passion, right? That's what it is, your interest and your hobbies. So tell me about it. So what I say to people is this: if you're going to put down traveling, which is a hobby, which is an interest, well, tell us where you've been. Where have you traveled? How? Do you like camping? Do you like solo traveling? Do you travel in groups? Tell us. And again, all you need to do that is one line, but it's that one line that can actually be the difference between you and somebody else who's just made a list. That is the difference between an employer saying, this CV stands out. This person sounds interesting. So let me give you a classic example. I've got swimming on my CV, okay? But of course, I haven't just put swimming down, have I? What I do, and it's the truth, I'm not lying, is every year I do a swimathon, okay, for a cancer charity. I raise money for cancer, and I started doing this when I lost a very good friend to cancer. Okay, so what I am telling potential employers are my core values. One, I'm telling the employer that I keep fit. Two, I raise money for charity. So these are the kind of people they want in their organization. But there's no other way really to tell them other than in your interests and hobbies. So this is where you can really sell yourself. So yes, interest and hobbies are really, really important, but so be very clever.
It's not necessarily a requirement, but if you're comfortable, if you want to, you could put your interest and hobbies, is what you're saying, right?
Yes, but I say put it. When I've gone for interviews in the past, I've had people focus more on my interest and hobbies, which then takes maybe 20 or 30 minutes of my interview time. And I'm so comfortable talking about it because these are my passions, right? And before you know it, the interview is actually over. So again, it's a way that you can actually trick a potential employer who will be so fascinated by what it is things you do outside of work that they can actually start off your interview based on, oh, I see you do this. Oh, I see you've traveled to blah. And it starts off a conversation. So do it. Do it.
Good point. I like that. And I might put that I like fitness, or I like power walks, or I like baking pies, maybe. I don't know, something like that.
Oh, Brenda, you do podcasts. I know so many people who do podcasts, who do online webinars, and I see their CVs, and I go, where's your mention of your podcast? How many guests have you had? You're ready today. You're doing a live-a-thon. Why not tell people that on your CV? Because again, they will ask you, Brenda, you did a live-a-thon? What was that about? Tell me. And of course, it's going to be a passion. You will spend a good few minutes talking about that. So do it. Yeah.
And it's kind of like, if you're in career transition, how are you spending your time? I mean, part of it is you're looking for a job, but now that you have time, you're doing some other activities. And even if you're working but looking, you probably do other activities outside of working, eating, sleeping, caring with your, things, spending time with your family. What else do you do? What is the other time? Is it reading? Is it doing a jigsaw puzzle? I mean, whatever it is, we all have activities, hobbies, and maybe we don't make as much time for them, but we all have interests that we could definitely weave in there.
And again, the classic one is reading. And every time I see a CV and somebody tells me reading, the first thing, what you don't want employers to do, and I demonstrate it so people can see, is you don't want me to ask a piece of paper questions.
Yes.
Right? So what I don't want you to do is tell me that you like reading, and I'm there looking at your CV going, yes, but what is it you actually like reading?
Yeah.
Right? So don't make me have to ask the piece of paper questions, because you're not there to give me the answers. So tell me. And this is the same thing with everything you put down on your CV. The moment a recruiter or an employer is talking to a piece of paper, this is what is going to happen.
Did you put a bunch of papers out for this interview to happen?
Specifically, I do it in my training sessions, and every time they look at me, I go, guess what is going to happen? They all look at me, go, you're going to tear up that paper. Correct. I'm going to tear up that paper. Okay, because this is what happens in reality. This is exactly what happens in reality. So yes, we laugh about it, and when I do it, it's hilarious. But again, think about it. I have to minimize the amount of CVs I've got in front of me. I've got to find every excuse to tear up your CV and put it in the bin.
Yeah. I see a couple of kind of comments and some related kind of questions, but this one I just want to address. If you guys are having problems watching the video, watching the live feed, this is actually live streaming on 3 networks. It's on LinkedIn. If you go to Brenda Meller, my activity feed, you'll see the stream there. You can also go to Meller Marketing on Facebook, and it's live streaming from my page on Facebook, or you can go and find it on YouTube. If you go to, if you look for Brenda Meller or Meller Marketing, you'll find my YouTube channel, and it's streaming there. And maybe I'll ask somebody who's watching if you wouldn't mind dropping the Facebook live link in there and the YouTube as well. And I'll try to put that in the event page for anybody who's having some difficulty, because we are going for 4 hours today, and I want to make sure you can watch all of this. Now, Jay was asking, where would the interests and hobbies go on the resume? Is it at the bottom? Kind of where
the very last thing. So let me give you a bit of the way you format your CV. So the very first thing you put on your CV is your personal details. You don't need to write the word resume. You don't need to write the word curriculum vitae. We all know what it is. We need the space. Okay. So the very first thing you're putting in terms of format are your personal details, your name, your address, but not specifically address, where you're from, your telephone number. If you are on LinkedIn, put your LinkedIn URL on your personal details, your personal emails. Your personal email should just have your name. Nothing like stellasexy69@hotmail.com. No. Okay. Save that for Facebook.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because there's people like, I've looked at resumes before and I'm like, say what? Like, what was that?
Like, Brenda, you know what's going to happen when I see that email? There you go. Okay.
They're making judgment calls on that. They don't think about the fact that they're making a judgment call. I mean, I've seen like in Michigan, Michigan State, the Spartan is the symbol, and I see ones that say Sparty party at, and I'm like, what party?
And again, it's those things. Remember, I've got 100 CVs in front of me. I'm only looking for one person and potentially maybe 10 people I want to call for interviews. I've got to get rid of 90. You're giving me a very good reason to throw yours in the bin when your email address is something inappropriate. So again, think about these things when you're putting this down on your CV. So you've got your personal details. The next thing you really need to put down on your CV, and it should follow in this format, is what we call your personal profile. And here you're giving us a brief summary of who you are, how many years experience you have, what value you can bring to a company, literally in a little paragraph. So you have your personal details and your personal profile. After that, you want to put down your key skills. Okay?
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. So, yeah, I'm here. So you want to now put down your key skills. And again, a lot of people will just list key skills, things like communication skills, management skills, leadership skills, blah, 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 blah. All well and good. Now, if you're going to list those skills, be very, very clear that you have to demonstrate those skills that you've listed in your work experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you're telling me you've got leadership skills, well, I need to see you demonstrating it in your work experience, because that's how I can catch you out. That's when I know you're not quite telling me the truth. Management skills, team, a lot of people put teamwork. All these are all skills, but demonstrate it. Okay. So if you're going to list your key skills down, then demonstrate it in your work experience. If not, if you're going to list some key skills down, write a little sentence against each one to demonstrate why you think you've got those key skills. Okay?
Yeah.
So after your key skills, you then put your work experience, and you always start with your present job and you work your way down. Okay? So you always start with the job you're in now. Okay. And then, of course, you put down key points of exactly what you're doing in the organization. Now, a lot of people, again, make the mistake of just literally copying and pasting the roles and responsibilities from the job description and put it on their CV and go, that's what I do. Well, no, we will catch you out on that. What we want to see in your work experience is exactly what value you have brought to your last or present or current employer. Okay, because that's what I want you to bring to my organization. So that's what you want to give me. So what we want to see in terms of value. So what were your achievements? What challenges did you overcome? That's what I want to see in your work experience. I just don't want to see a list of your roles and responsibilities. Does that make sense? So after you've done your work experience, you then put your academic qualifications. And a lot of people always think, but hang on a second, I need to put my academic qualifications right on top. Your employers don't really care about your academic qualifications. What they care about is whether or not you have the skills, the experience, and knowledge to do the job. Your academic qualification complements that. So it's not that important. So that's why we put your academic qualification, work experience, academic qualification, professional qualifications, you put that after your work experience. And then after your work experience, you put down your hobbies and interests.
Kind of priority order then, like most important at the top, least important.
Absolutely. Remember what I said right at the beginning, Brenda. Yeah. We want those employers to be really interested in wanting to actually go on to page 2 because you've put some really juicy stuff on page 1.
Okay. All right, good. And I want to kind of shift gears a little bit. I'm seeing some comments coming in and one, I mean, people are commenting on you tearing the resumes, and And this one, Jeff is kind of being funny. He's going to laminate my resume for a second. I mean, guys, I want to make sure you're understanding the point. Stella is a good person. She is a good human being. She is not sharing the ripping of the resume to be cruel. She is illustrating what happens hypothetically, and sometimes they don't literally rip your resume, guys. I mean, they're just not looking at them. And I see another gentleman, and I want to make sure you guys know, when you comment, everybody can see those comments. So when you comment below, and if you don't share the same point of view, that's totally fine. You can scroll on past the video. I don't think it's it's not done in a negative way. Stella's trying to show this in a positive way, because our goal is to help you find a new job, whether you're working but looking, or you're unemployed and actively in career transition. I mean, Stella is just bringing these awesome tips to you today to show you how to get a resume that pops, and to show you how you can navigate towards an easier career. And I want to remind you, if you're watching and working but looking, if you don't want people to know, do not leave a comment. And if you have a comment that is maybe not a positive comment, you might want to double think leaving it. I will thank you for leaving a comment, because it actually broadcasts the post out to your network, so more people see our feed. So thank you for that. But there's just some great nuggets that Stella is sharing with us today. And we're here to help you, and that's kind of the goal of this whole event.
Can I just say, Brenda, me tearing up those CVs is actually not an act. This is reality. Okay,
it's not
no, not me personally.
You're saying this is what people are doing when they're getting resumes, right?
This is reality. Yeah. This is me as an employability skills trainer speaking to employers. This is me having gone to HR departments in organizations and see what human beings do with a CV. So yes, this is the reality of the job market. There are thousands of people applying for jobs. So if your CV is what we call not fit for purpose, unfortunately, the reality is it is going straight into the bin. So I'm not going to apologize for what is fact.
We're trying to help. We're trying to help, guys.
And that's what it is.
Right? Yeah.
That's what it is. Okay. So, I know it's hard, and that's what it is. It's a real, and we've all been there in terms of when we were looking for jobs. And this is exactly what used to happen. And again, I've been in a position where I've had thousands of CVs, literally, that I've had to go through in a matter of 2 days. And I'm thinking, OMG, and I'm looking for spelling errors. I'm looking for fonts. I'm looking for mistakes, because I'm just thinking I need to narrow it down to the best candidate for this organization. And unfortunately, that's what they do. So there you have it.
There you have it. And I want to encourage people that are watching today. And I found Dan Roth in the feed, by the way, guys. If you're not following Dan, you got to follow him. He's using the hashtag Dan, not that Dan Roth, and he'll tell you about it. And actually, when I told him, I said, you should use that. He's like, no. I like, sometimes you got to own what is part of your personality and part of what makes you unique. And if you're watching today, if you're unemployed and actively career searching, I would recommend you comment in the stream right now. Tell people what is your targeted job title and what is your targeted geographic area. You don't need to say, hi, my name is Dan Roth, because it already says it in your name there, but use this as an opportunity to get your name out there. And that's what Stella is here is offering some great tips. We're trying to give you guys some additional visibility. So use that. And everybody was jumping on the Stella love train when I was talking about this. Because you're here to tell us the real story, what is happening. If you are watching this and you're wondering, like, why am I not getting callbacks for my resume? The recruiters are not going to say, I ripped it up because you had a typo. Stella is telling you that. She's trying to help with that. So,
and also, when I actually deliver on employability skills, so when I have a group that I deliver on, I actually come on LinkedIn and I go, I'm delivering a course on employability skills on CVs, employers, connections. Tell me, when you employ people, what do you do? A lot of what I'm telling you is exactly what they're telling me. So again, I'm not making it up. This is hard facts.
Yeah. Good point. So I have one question coming in here from Nancy. And I think there's some conversations going in the thread about what to put in your resume and where. And I think the advice that someone said was put your targeted job title or the job position at the top, and then job positions in the experience section. Any thoughts on that, Stella?
Again, depending on what it is you're actually looking for. So if you're looking specifically for a job, then of course you need to put your job title and what it is you're actually looking for as a header. Okay, so if it's an accountant, for example, then obviously that's what you put. But you need to actually put a job title that is relevant to the job that you are looking for. There's no point putting accountant and you're applying for an engineering job. It just doesn't make sense. And again, this is why we often tell people, especially with CVs, because a lot of people make the same mistake, is they think one CV is enough. Okay, you have to tweak your CV according to the job you are applying for. Okay, it's always ongoing. So yes, you may have one generic CV, which is absolutely fine for all the generic jobs out there. But if you're looking for specific jobs with job titles, please read the job description. Your job description is the point of reference for you to revise your CV. A lot of people just look at it and just go, oh God, it's a 5 pages long of words that I don't need to read. Your job description is really, really important because you need to study it to be able to adapt your CV to it.
Okay. And I've heard of, I saw someone ask a question, tailoring, you just answered this question, tailoring it to the job. I have heard of sites like, and I can't think of the name of it, maybe somebody who's watching, or maybe Stella, you're familiar with it, but you put in the job description on this site and then you put in your resume and it tells you how much of a match that you are. If anyone watching is aware of what that site is, drop it into comments right now. I can't think of the name of it offhand. Have you heard of it, Stella?
I don't know what the job site is, but there are plenty of that. And this is where the applicant tracking system comes into play. Because what has happened is that there would have been keywords that the tracking system will pull up against the CV. So yes, they might put a job description. Okay, job scan. So they might put a job description, but there will be keywords within your CV that has been put into the ATS. Again, it all boils down to algorithms here. Okay, these are machines. So again, you have to be very, very careful in terms of a job title. So if you see a job title, then match it onto the CV to then put it onto to then upload it into sites like JobScan.
Okay, yeah, and I just dropped it. It's up on screen right now if you guys aren't familiar. And thank you so much, Jeff. You are awesome, my friend. I really appreciate it. And Merlinda also added it up on screen. I'm going to drop it into a banner right now just so you guys can see it. But it's JobScan, and I believe you can get, I don't know, it's like 3 to 5 scans, and then you have to pay to upgrade. I mean, they're a business. They're trying to run a business here, but you can do a sample resume and job, and I think there's a couple that are in there. I do see it has LinkedIn optimization. I've never used that service personally. I'm not familiar with it. If anyone in the that's watching has used it, feel free to comment on that in there. But I love the point here of, there's so many resources out there that are going to help you kind of beat that ATS. And Stella, I know you talked about this a little bit earlier, but there may be folks that are just joining now that really are interested in understanding, how do you beat the ATS? Do you have any kind of reminders there at a high level on the ATS?
Yeah, so to beat the ATS, avoid graphics, avoid any sort of icons, symbols, text boxes, tables, underlines, italics. Mixed fonts, avoid all of that. White font on dark background, ATS doesn't like it. Vertical lines. So these are the kind of things that you should avoid on your CV so that it's ATS, what we call ATS friendly.
Gotcha. Okay, good to know. Thank you. And I'm popping her URL on because it's coming up to 10:55. Bobby Umar is our next guest, and I'm waiting for Bobby to come into the room. Now, have you met Bobby before, Stella?
I haven't met him, but I've heard of him on when I go on Clubhouse. I'm obviously connected with him, so I do know who Bobby is. Yes.
Good. So tell us, there might be a few folks watching, and you said Clubhouse, and they're like, I keep hearing about this Clubhouse thing. What is it? And by the way, what's your Clubhouse handle? I'll drop it into chat right now.
So Clubhouse, Stella Da Silva at Stellalicious is Clubhouse. I'm more of an introvert on Clubhouse, so I tend to listen more on Clubhouse than I do going up on stage. But LinkedIn really is my platform of choice. One last thing I'm absolutely going to say, especially if people are paying to get their CVs done, or paying, loads of money to get your CVs done.
Oh, yeah.
Be very, very careful. And the simple reason is this. What happens is then your CV becomes quite generic. It becomes, oh, I've seen this kind of thing before. So it doesn't really, it doesn't become you. Does that make sense? So again, this is why even when people come to me to get their CVs done and they go, can you write one? I go, no, it's not my job to write your CV. You have to do your CV, but I will give you tools and I'll share ideas and in terms of formatting, because you know you better than I know you. So again, this is always the advice that I always give to people, especially those who want other people to write their CVs for them. You will be found out at interview in any event. So be very, very careful. And again, save your money. It's not rocket science when you do it in a right format. And again, the internet is full of amazing resources. You don't have to spend loads of money to all these people and all these companies and organizations to do your CV for you. Just always remember that. You want to stand out.
I will say there are good resume writers and there are opportunistic resume writers. And I agree with you. And I would ask around, and if you do decide you want to work with someone, ask them for samples of their work with names and look up those people on LinkedIn and see.
Check recommendations as well.
Right?
Check recommendations on LinkedIn as well, because again, as I said, CVs should be personal to you. They should really demonstrate you. That's who you want to sell. So a lot of people make the mistake, even has some CV writers, a lot of people make that mistake of writing about themselves instead about their clients. So just be careful.
Very good. Hey, I see Bobby is in the waiting room, and when I'm in StreamYard, I can see the people, and I see he's like getting things ready. And I never want to pull people up on screen before telling them, "Hey, I can see you up on screen," so that they're prepared. Because here we are, Bobby. How you doing today?
I'm good, thanks.
Hi, Bobby.
Lovely day. Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Got my tea. I'm ready to go.
A lot of us, we've never met in person. And even virtually, we it's kind of like, I remember toddlers, they say it's parallel play, like we play next to each other, in similar networks, but we've never had the chance to meet. So hey, and that's your little one, that's your daughter, right? What's her name?
That's my daughter, Raya. Yeah.
Hi,
Raya. That's great. So Stella, thank you again for joining and for going a little bit longer. We're not sure what happened to Joe Saunders. We have a missing persons report out on Joe right now. We'll try to find her. But again, for people that are looking to connect with Stella, here's Stella's URL on LinkedIn. And thank you again, Stella, for joining us and for helping to kick off our LinkedIn Live-a-thon.
Thank you so much for having me, Brenda. It's been absolutely fun.